after all of his hard work, the fruits of his labor, we've got David Lockwood. He is the consultant, co-principal of the main researcher, head cheese, grand poobah of the SFA, State of the Industry Specialty Food Report 2022. David Lockwood, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you, Susan. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, I mean, it must be a big sigh of relief right now. You're done with the report. I mean, how long did that take you? How long? What's that like?
It goes on all year, but
right.
the most of it takes about 6 months.
Right.
So
And it's
all
just
year.
You're in front of the computer. You're gathering the stats and the trends, right?
In front of the computer, but also talking to lots and lots of people in the industry.
Lots of people.
Yes.
What are they seeing? What's their take? Right. Okay. So give us what's without even thinking, what's the main takeaway? What's the biggest thing that you're...
Well, the biggest thing is that having done all of the research into sales data and talking to people in the industry, what we've concluded is that the industry is as robust and exciting as ever. And every single thing it takes to be a thriving business in the specialty food market has gotten more complex, harder, and more expensive. That's a big takeaway, and that kind of is what all other questions kind of feed into that platform.
Wow. And how long is the report? It's pretty in-depth.
It's about 100 and something pages.
Okay, wow.
110.
Okay. Let's get into some of the pages. So first of all, let's get into what the top 10 fastest growing categories. I thought that was interesting. So Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Sure. The way it shakes out is that the fastest growing categories in the last year and a half have been refrigerated. So the top 3 fastest growing are all refrigerated. So ready to drink tea and coffee and refrigerated entrees. And then the rest of it shakes out. Refrigerated pasta is also in there, even though that's a tiny category. But that's fastest growing. A couple of them are still indulgent, so that's interesting. That would be chocolate and frozen desserts. And then staples that are doing very well. Chocolate is also a staple, but then pasta sauces doing fantastically well. So it does span the whole everything, but refrigerated a little faster than everything else because, we're now actually starting to bounce out of the pandemic. So what got closed during the pandemic, in-store bakeries, some of them, certainly the delis closed. Now they're all fully open back up.
Oh, I see. Okay, so you would attribute the pandemic, the lockdown, but now we're coming back into people are missing that. They're missing the perishables, right? That's
absolutely, and the convenience items. So refrigerated entrees, more than half of that is sushi. So that's a big thing. And then it's sandwiches and things like that.
Right.
Salads.
I guess I can see that's a very delicacy item you couldn't get during lockdown, sushi.
Exactly. Right. So that actually grew 32% last year alone. Wow. That's phenomenal. You don't see that, other than post-pandemic.
I mean, can you tell me what is like the average growth of the category?
Average growth of all of the 63 categories that we measure in track sales, average growth rate for the last 2 years is 25.4%. And of course, most of that 20%-ish was in 2020, but last year was about 4.3%. So still growing, but the changes and the thing everybody wants to know about is that unit growth is not as high. So unit growth only 0.6%.
Oh, wow.
That's slow, so things are starting to slow down. And what we are seeing is that already, even up through mid-April where our data stopped, is that companies and people are starting to look at categories where maybe they have to trade down or trade out if they're finding them to be too expensive. So, for instance, soup is a good example of that, where soup in the last 4 weeks, sales grew 15.8%, but units declined 5%. So even though soup is a category that does well during high inflationary periods, it's getting to be so expensive that some people are either trading out of specialty into conventional soup, or they're just leaving it all together for another category. Wow. So we're already starting to see the impact of inflation.
Oh, interesting. Okay. That's very interesting how you really have to really think on your feet and re-strategize.
Yes.
But it's not that your only option is just getting out of a whole industry, as you're saying, moving from specialty to conventional. There's different avenues, different ways that you can try. What about categories that grew in the past year alone? I think so between 2021 and now, or is it? So baby and toddler food. Talk to me about that.
That's a big one, obviously, too, and it's been growing quite a while. But it too helped because a lot of it now is refrigerated, not all of it, but that helps, and it's obviously clean label, and in the specialty food world, it's more likely to be clean label, and that's, mothers are looking for.
Especially, yes. I mean, with the onset, this may not be in the report, but what are your thoughts? With the onset, with the challenges with the baby formula. I'm sure we're anticipating we're going to see a big increase. We're going to continue to see that category grow. I've been hearing in the news, parents, they're just starting, their babies on
and that's one that caught people by surprise. Even though we've been living with supply chain issues for now a year and a half, nobody saw the baby formula thing coming because it was concentrated so much, not in the specialty industry, but with companies like Unilever running short of product and having to shut down a huge manufacturing plant. So that was, not it so much to do with the specialty food industry, but certainly it creates an opportunity for all of those companies that can produce the product. And that's what retailers are looking for is, can you deliver this product on a regular basis? That's
really what it's about,
right?
What about wellness bars?
Talk about that. Wellness bars is an interesting category. Over the last decade, it grew and grew and grew several years ago, and now it's been up and down the last several years. And it didn't do very well during the pandemic, partly because so many people stopped going into retail stores, but really people stopped going to work or going out to work. So on-the-go eating just plummeted in 2020. So now, of course, it's bouncing right back.
Okay, so of course we have to hit a very talked about topic: BIPOC and women-owned brands.
Yes.
What are the trends we're seeing there? What did you find in your research?
Certainly, I'd say they're both growing quite a lot, but of the two, women-owned is definitely, especially in the specialty food industry. In fact, if you look in the SFA catalog, you'll see women-owned industries. It goes on for a couple of pages. A lot of companies, it does resonate with people. So that and it has even surprised women owners that people will come up and say, "Oh, I didn't even know this was women-owned. Now I'm going to tell all my friends." So that one resonates a lot. BIPOC, of course, is newer, but also is something that people are interested in. So I'll be interested to see how that grows in the next few years.
Two categories definitely to watch.
Yes, absolutely.
Absolutely. What about the plant-based market? That also has got a lot of buzz. What were your findings there? Are people sick of it? Are people still caring about it? What do you got?
Oh my gosh, that could take the whole show because it is so dynamic and changing so rapidly.
Wow.
I'll try to be as brief as possible because I can hardly do it in less than 10 minutes. But specialty food, plant-based has been growing a lot, as you know, in the last several years. But guess what? It stopped and came to a crashing slowdown last year. So in 2020, it grew 22%, which is a lot and a little above average. In this past year, it only grew 4%, so barely as fast as the rest of the market. Why is that? It's because what everybody knows is plant-based is Beyond Meat and Impossible Foods, which both really burst onto the scene in 2019. And that's what's accounted for a lot of the growth in the specialty food industry. Why did it slow down last year is the big question. And the answer to that is all of the big meat companies that you know of, so JBS and BRF and ADM Marfrig, Smithfield Foods, Tyson, they all looked at what plant-based was being and what Beyond Meat and Impossible was doing, and they said, aha, textured vegetable protein, TVP, which was the food innovation of the 1970s and 80s. So literally they think, you can just make a look-alike product out of vegetable protein or soy protein. And sure enough, it does kind of look similar, but what that does is saturate the market, and consumers are going, you know what? some of this is interesting and unique and we like it, but some of these things don't interest us that much. So growth has slowed down a lot. So what I say is this is what I call the new proteins market. And what it is now shifting to is the next generation, what I'll call NP 2.0,
Okay.
which is interesting because it's a whole bunch of companies most people haven't heard of that are going to be launching products in the next year. And you'll start to see things not as the scale of distribution that will feed the whole world, but will be at least enough distribution to where you and I can buy them in stores.
Wow.
And that will be companies like Nature's Find,
Right.
My Forest, Meaty, Upside Foods, Aleph Farms, all of those kinds of companies are going to start coming out with launches toward the end of this year. Just to give you an example of, when is it going to feed the world? Well, several weeks ago, you probably would have seen that Eat Just took in $467 million,
Wow.
most of which is to build a bioreactor that will produce 30 million pounds of product annually. But it costs that much, and it's going to take a year to build because there's never before been a build out of the bioreactors that you need if you're using fermentation or cell-cultured products. And it's going to take a couple of years to ramp that up. The infrastructure literally doesn't exist to feed the world with all these great new products yet. It's coming.